Welcome back to the Drive Formula podcast, where we take trust, communication, and action to accelerate your team from 0 to 60. So we are still on our enhanced audio book, Driving Engagement. If you haven't picked up a copy of the book, it is available online at your favorite online bookstore, Amazon and others. So that is Driving Engagement by Eric Lichty and Marcus Williams. Check it out so that you can follow along. So even if you're listening in the car or while you're working outside or while you're exercising, if a certain point really hits you, you can go back, highlight it in the book, take some notes, and keep track of what you're learning here. So this week we are going to read Chapter 6. This is the pure audio book episode, and then next week will be our deep dive into Chapter 6, where Eric and I talk about the principles and kind of go deeper into the stories and ideas behind this chapter. So let's get started. Chapter 6. Addressing the failures. You've heard this phrase, timing is everything, but have you really thought about it? Your car's movement is wholly dependent on multiple things happening in succession and in the correct order. Many cars have an RPM gauge on the dashboard. But do you really know what that means? In a small car, the RPM, or revolutions per minute, means that a 4-cylinder engine has 4 controlled explosions per 1 revolution. So, a car that travels down the road at 3,000 RPM is having 12,000 controlled explosions per every 1 minute of driving. If you have a bigger vehicle with an 8-cylinder engine, that number doubles to 24,000 controlled explosions in 1 minute of driving. That is not 12,000 revolutions or turns, it's 12,000 explosions. Boom! Depending on the size or scope of an employee's role, they may be dealing with dozens of decisions and tasks every day. As a leader, do you truly understand all that your employees do in their time at work to move the organization forward? As a vehicle moves us from one location to another, we fuel and maintain the vehicle, trusting that all those controlled explosions will continue to happen every minute to get us to where we need to go. In fact, most of us never even think about all those little forces that get us from A to B. No 2 car parts do the same job. The pistons can't do the job of the valves, and vice versa. The explosions only happen when every part is functioning properly, independently, and yet in sync with the whole. When one of those parts breaks down or wears out, you have to have it repaired or replaced. You might be on a long journey with a demanding deadline, yet as soon as you hear the vehicle misfiring or not acting as it should, you have to find the nearest service station and pull over. We all know that breakdowns always happen at the most inopportune times and in the most inconvenient places. That's just a fact of life. Marcus. I recall when I was a newlywed, we owned an old beater Dodge Omni and were driving from Utah to Southern California. We stopped for gas in Baker, California. If you've ever driven on the I-15 freeway, you've seen the giant thermometer at Baker recording the insanely hot temperatures in Death Valley. When we finished filling up, the car wouldn't start. We found someone who agreed to jumpstart the battery, and the car fired right up. There were only a few hours left in our journey, and we didn't have the money or desire to spend additional time in Baker, so off we went. A few miles down the road, there was a rest stop. The car started losing power as I was driving, so I was able to pull into the rest area, where it died completely. I don't remember if we had a cell phone at that point, but even if we had, there would not have been any service that deep in the desert. Luckily, there was a payphone at the rest area, and we called my father-in-law, a mechanic who lived in Southern California. He immediately diagnosed our problem as a bad alternator and agreed to grab a new battery and drive out to meet us. There we sat in the heat of the desert while he drove the 2.5 hours to meet us. He changed the battery, and we were able to make it all the way to his home on the new battery's charge. What should we have done? Well, first of all, we should have checked the condition of the vehicle before leaving on our journey and conducted preventative maintenance. But let's say that we did that and still didn't catch the bad alternator. The wise choice would have been to recognize the signs when we were at the gas station in Baker, instead of fooling ourselves into believing the car had died for no reason. But we were poor college students, newly married and living on a shoestring budget. At the moment, we could not see how we would be able to afford a hotel room and baker or mechanic. Luckily, my father-in-law was close enough to help. Without him, we would have paid even more for a long tow to Barstow, in addition to repair costs. We just wanted to make it to the end of our journey, so we were too stubborn to stop along the way to take care of the issue. We just needed the car to hold together long enough to make it to our destination. Does this sound familiar? Does your business live and die by deadlines, contracts, shipping, deliverables, advertised release dates? The list goes on. As a leader, you just need your team to hold it all together until you reach the next all-important deadline. But sometimes, the best way to meet a deadline tomorrow is to pause and fix an issue today. When you feel someone on your team sputtering, or you notice the timing is off, don't ignore it. Don't convince yourself it will be fine. Otherwise, you will find yourself stranded in Death Valley. Are you willing to blow up your entire engine just to reach one goal? Where does that leave you in the future? How do you expect to make it to the next step if you blew up your team to reach this one? Change your thinking. You aren't losing time and money when you stop to make a repair. You are saving time and money in the future while maintaining the operability of your car. When you step back to fix an issue, you may actually increase the efficiency of your team going forward. You may replace that 4-cylinder engine with an 8-cylinder and move ahead faster than you ever imagined. It's always great if you can repair a broken part. If your employee is struggling to fulfill his or her role efficiently and timely, you have to diagnose the problem and decide how to move forward. Maybe you have them in the wrong place, as if you plugged the wrong fuse into the wrong socket. On the other hand, you may find that your employee belongs to a truck, and you're trying to drive a sedan. In some cases, you may find that the part is unrepairable and needs to be replaced. Sometimes, the best service you can offer an employee can be the most difficult for you to give. In these instances, the best answer is to let them go. The truth can hurt, but if they are in the wrong place, you are ultimately doing them a service. How you do it matters. A poor repair job doesn't do the trick. Act in humility and firmness when you share the news. Of course, you must follow the guidance of your HR department, but remember that you are talking to another human being, and it could very well be you in that position one day. Don't speak in meaningless corporate shop talk. Provide honest feedback with true sincerity. As their leader, you see things they don't. You may see where they would be a better fit, even if they haven't quite figured it out yet for themselves. If they agree to accept it, offer your honest opinion. Share where you see them being the happiest and most productive. It may be the first time someone has ever given them honest feedback. Our entire lives, we are told we can be whatever we want to be. Rarely does someone say we will be happiest doing what we are good at in a role where we feel the most satisfaction. The two may not be the same thing. Marcus: I wanted to be a pilot growing up, but after studying the requirements and lifestyle required of pilots, I knew I wouldn't be happy. The job did not fit the lifestyle I wanted to live. As a leader, you are responsible for identifying and fixing a problem before it becomes a catastrophe. Avoid the tunnel vision of deadlines and benchmarks. If you fail to maintain your car, it will operate for a time, but it will eventually explode, and you may not be able to avoid getting stranded on the side of a long road. All right, folks, that was Chapter 6 of Driving Engagement, Addressing the Failures. This is a very important chapter that we will dive into next week. Eric and I will take that deep dive in our enhanced audiobook. So I hope that you enjoyed this chapter. If you haven't yet, please subscribe, click the notification button so that you know when we release new episodes. That really helps. And share with your friends if you find the information here valuable. Thank you for listening, and we will catch you next time on the Drive Formula Podcast.